They thought humiliating her would be the highlight of the night, forcing a quiet black girl to sing on stage like some kind of school pet. In a packed auditorium, Carter Hale shoved a mic into Lena Russell's face, convinced she'd crack, choke, collapse. But here's the twist. The girl they mocked wasn't a victim. She was a national vocal instructor, a storm disguised as silence. And when she opened her mouth, every bully in that room learned what real power sounds like. The annual award night at Dalton High was supposed to feel glamorous. Golden spotlights sweeping across velvet curtains, students dressed in their best outfits, camera flashes bursting like glitter in the air. But to Lena Russell, sitting alone at the far left row, the room felt more like a pressure chamber. Every cheer sounded too sharp. Every laugh felt a beat too long. And every glance in her direction carried the same mix of curiosity and judgment she'd been drowning in since the day she transferred here. Dalton High had a reputation. Shiny on the outside, rotten in all the places no spotlight ever reached, especially when it came to girls who looked like Lena. She adjusted her seat, clutching the program booklet with both hands. Her plan for tonight was simple: blend in, clap politely, leave quietly. No attention, no trouble. She'd had enough of both these past few weeks. But trouble, unfortunately, was already looking her way. From the center row, Carter Hale, Dalton High's golden boy, student council president and self-proclaimed king of the microphone, leaned back in his seat and noticed her. His lips curled the way a wolf smiles at something small and slow-moving. Beside him, Ivy Cole whispered something behind her manicured hand, and Mason Drew let out a laugh that echoed through the aisle. Lena stiffened. She'd seen that look before. She'd seen it in hallways, classrooms, lunch lines. Boys like Carter didn't need a reason to make someone like her a target. They only needed an audience. And tonight, Carter had 500 of them. When the MC finished announcing the last award of the first segment, Carter shot out of his seat, snatched the handheld microphone, and walked onto the stage with the confidence of someone who believed the world was built for him. The crowd erupted. Cheers, whistles, applause. Dalton High adored him, worshipped him. "All right, Dalton," Carter shouted, pacing across the stage as if it belonged to him. "I think we could use a little entertainment before we continue with the awards. And lucky you. I already have something fun in mind." Lena's stomach dropped. She felt the shift in the room, subtle, dangerous. People leaned forward. Ivy and Mason exchanged smirks. Carter scanned the crowd theatrically, but Lena knew that wasn't what he was doing. He wasn't searching. He was hunting. Then his eyes locked on hers. Lena froze. Her grip on the program tightened until the edges crumpled. She shook her head slightly, almost pleading with her eyes. "Don't do this." But Carter's grin widened. "Let's invite someone new to this stage," he announced, voice dripping with false charm. "Someone who hasn't had a chance to show Dalton High what she's made of." "No, no, no, no. Lena Russell," he declared, raising his hand like a judge delivering a sentence. "Come on up." The crowd erupted, not in support, but in the wild excitement of spectators who smelled humiliation coming. Lena's chair felt glued to the floor. Heat rushed up her neck. She hadn't signed up for anything. She hadn't even spoken in class yet. What Carter was doing wasn't spontaneous. It was a setup. Her heart hammered, echoing louder than the applause forcing her forward. Someone behind her nudged her. Someone else pointed their phone at her, already recording. Whispered comments sliced through the air. Who is she again? "New girl. Quiet. Awkward. Let's see if she can even speak." Spotlights shifted abruptly, sweeping across the audience before stopping directly on her. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff with the wind trying to shove her off. Lena rose slowly, her knees unsteady, her breath tight. She walked through the aisle as applause turned into rhythmic claps, mocking, taunting. Ivy and Mason watched her pass with smug delight, and Carter stood on stage, smiling like a magician who knew exactly how his trick would end. As Lena stepped into the beam of white light, she realized something chilling. This wasn't an invitation, it was an ambush. And as the crowd quieted, waiting for the spectacle to begin, Lena understood this was only the beginning of the worst night of her life. The lights hit Lena like a physical force the moment she stepped onto the stage. They were blinding, white, hot, merciless, casting her silhouette against a sea of clapping hands and glowing phone screens. 500 students roared with anticipation, not warmth. Their excitement felt predatory, hungry, the kind of thrill found not in music, but in watching someone fall. Carter moved toward her with slow, exaggerated confidence, stretching out the moment to savor the crowd's reaction. His footsteps echoed across the wooden stage, almost theatrical. When he reached Lena, he didn't greet her. He grabbed her wrist. Hard. Lena flinched. His grip was strong enough to hurt, fingers digging into her skin, as if she were nothing but a prop he could position however he pleased. "Relax," Carter said loudly, lifting her arm as though he were presenting her to the audience. "Dalton High just wants to hear your cute little voice." His tone was dripping with mock sweetness, amplified through the speakers so everyone could hear every ounce of humiliation in it. The crowd exploded into laughter. Phones went up instantly. Rows and rows of screens pointed at her like a firing squad. Some students zoomed in. Others shouted jokes. One voice near the front yelled, "This is gonna be good." Another added, "Bet she can't even hit a note." Lena's chest tightened. Her breath trembled. She wanted to pull her hand back, to yank herself away from Carter's grip, but the stage felt like a trap, every angle covered by cameras, every second magnified under the lights. Carter leaned in close, the microphone brushing his lips. "Come on, Lena," he said, his voice pitched in a cruel whisper only she could hear. "Let's give them a show?" That was when Ivy stepped forward from the side of the stage. She wore the kind of smile that belonged on someone watching an accident, not helping, just enjoying the wreck. In her hands was a second microphone, sleek and silver, with a small digital display glowing red. A display Lena recognized instantly. A voice changer, a distortion tool, a device used to warp voices into cheap, embarrassing caricatures. Ivy approached with theatrical flourish, holding the mic out as if it were a gift wrapped with a bow. "Use this one," she said sweetly. "It works better." Mason snickered behind her. "Oh, it definitely works." Lena's heart stopped for a beat. This wasn't an invitation to sing. This wasn't even a prank. This was sabotage, the kind that would be recorded, edited, posted, replayed, memed, mocked, and stamped onto her reputation forever. One distorted note, and she'd become the punchline of Dalton High for the rest of the year, maybe longer. Lena's palms grew damp, her throat tightened, but beneath the panic, something else flickered, an old, familiar awareness, a part of her that had been trained for stages far bigger than this one, a part of her that recognized microphones the way some people recognized weapons. She knew exactly what kind of distortion that mic produced. She knew exactly how they planned to use it. And she knew exactly how devastating the clip would look when the entire school saw it. This wasn't humiliation. This was an execution. Carter raised his mic higher. "Don't be shy, Lena," he said, playing to the audience. "Everyone wants to hear you." More laughter, more phones pointed at her, more voices chanting her name, not out of support, but out of expectation for the disaster they wanted to witness. Lena swallowed hard. Her pulse thudded against her ribs. She looked at the mic in Ivy's hand, then at Carter's smirk, then at the crowd, hungry for her collapse. And in that split second, Lena understood something piercing and cruel. They didn't just want her embarrassed. They wanted her ruined. They wanted to break her. The realization burned through her, terrifying and electrifying at once. But Carter didn't notice. His confidence swelled with every cheer, every laugh, every taunting chant. He truly believed Lena was powerless, too soft, too quiet, too scared to fight back. And that belief was his biggest mistake. because while the audience waited for her to fall apart, Lena felt something sharp rising inside her, a spark, a refusal, a storm. The spotlight slammed down on Lena with brutal precision, isolating her in a cold cone of white. Everything outside that circle faded into darkness. Faces blurred, rows of seats vanished, and the buzzing hall now felt like a cavern. She could hear nothing but her own pulse pounding in her ears, and Carter Hale breathing beside her. He stepped forward, positioning himself between Lena and the crowd like a master showman about to unveil the evening's entertainment. His shadow stretched across the stage, long and crooked. "Ladies and gentlemen," Carter announced, raising the mic like a trophy, "our guest of honor tonight, Lena Russell." The audience erupted into laughter, not applause. Laughter, cruel, loud, shameless. Lena stared at the floorboards, the light burning her eyelids. Carter circled her slowly, theatrically. "You know," he said, voice dripping with venom masked as humor. "Lena's been really quiet since she transferred here. So shy." He leaned closer, as if sharing a secret with the school. "Or maybe she just doesn't like talking to people like us." A wave of "ooh" rolled through the hall. Lena stiffened. Carter smiled, wide, practiced, poisonous. "Come on," he continued. "Why don't you show Dalton what that cute little voice of yours sounds like? Sing something, anything." He paused. Then he twisted the knife, or he lowered his voice, letting it echo through the speakers. "I swear you'll become famous tonight in the worst way possible." A roar of laughter exploded from the crowd. Some students doubled over, others slapped their friends' shoulders. Phone screens glowed brighter, recording every second. Someone shouted, "Yeah, sing something, new girl." Another yelled, "Don't choke." Lena's throat tightened. Carter turned toward her fully now, facing her under the spotlight. "What's wrong?" he mocked. "Cat got your tongue? Or does the stage make you nervous?" He dragged out the last word like it was something dirty. Her silence fed the crowd's hunger. He wasn't just mocking her voice. He was mocking her skin, her presence, her place in this school, mocking the idea that someone like her could ever belong on the same stage as him. And the worst part? Everyone was letting him. Lena's gaze slid to the edge of the stage where the MC stood frozen. She had seen the man's expression earlier. Wide eyes, furrowed brows. He knew this wasn't part of the script. He knew this wasn't harmless fun. But the MC didn't intervene. He didn't even speak. He simply stood there, stiff and silent, because Carter Hale wasn't just a bully. He was protected. His father, Bruce Hale, donated tens of thousands of dollars to Dalton High every year, funding the auditorium, the athletic programs, and half the scholarships. Carter walked through the school like he owned every hallway, every teacher, every microphone, and the MC knew better than to get in the way of a Hale. The laughter died down to a simmer, like a pot ready to boil again, waiting for Lena to crack. Carter swooped closer, lowering his face to hers. "You hear that?" he whispered, though the mic still caught his words. "They're waiting. Don't keep them bored." Her hand trembled, but not from fear. Not anymore. Under the light, hidden by the angle of her shoulder, her fingers curled slowly, tightening, tightening, until her nails pressed half-moons into her palm. Her breath steadied, her spine straightened by a fraction. The audience saw a girl shaking, but Carter missed the shift. What was rising inside her wasn't panic. It was something older, deeper, hotter. Something she hadn't touched in a long time, something she'd buried to survive this new school. A choice, a line she was about to cross. Carter smirked, waiting for her to break, waiting for his victory. But Lena lifted her head, just a little, enough for the audience to see her eyes, and there was nothing scared in them, only a spark, small, sharp, dangerous. A decision had been made. And though Carter didn't realize it, he had just set in motion the one thing he could never control. Lena Russell was done letting anyone decide who she was. For a long, stretching moment, nothing moved. Not Lena, not Carter. not even the restless sea of students below the stage. The auditorium, so loud, so alive only seconds ago, fell into a strange, unnatural stillness, the kind that didn't feel peaceful, but dangerous, a pause before a storm, a breath before a blow. The spotlight on Lena flickered once, casting a sharp halo around her as if isolating her from every ounce of safety in the room. 500 eyes pinned her in place. Her ears rang with the weight of the quiet, and her heart thumped steady, slow, deliberate, no longer frantic. Carter broke the silence first. "Hurry up!" he snapped into his microphone, frustration slipping into his tone. "What's the problem? Or is your voice just not good enough?" The crowd reacted instantly. A wave of whoops and taunts erupted. "Yeah, sing something already. Come on, new girl. Stop wasting time. Let's hear her squeak." Carter grinned again, feeding on the energy as if it belonged to him. "They're waiting, Lena," he taunted, leaning toward her. "Don't disappoint." Lena lifted her chin, barely an inch. The movement was small, but it sliced through the tension like a blade. Her eyes drifted toward Ivy's microphone, the one with the distortion effect glowing red, the trap waiting to be sprung, the humiliation ready to be recorded. She saw it clearly now, the entire setup laid bare under the lights, and something inside her hardened. She extended a hand, not to take the mic, but to reject it. "Turn off the distortion," Lena said. Her voice wasn't loud, it wasn't harsh, but it hit the room like a crack of thunder. Every conversation died mid-breath. The students stared, stunned. A few phones lowered, not out of respect, but disbelief. Did she really just ask for something? Carter blinked, then barked a laugh so loud it echoed. "What was that?" he said, cupping a hand to his ear theatrically. "Did the new girl just make a demand?" Mason snorted. Ivy scoffed like she'd heard the funniest joke of the night. Several students giggled nervously, unsure whether to laugh or stay stunned. But some didn't laugh. Some leaned forward, curiosity sparking. Lena repeated, steady and calm, "Turn off the distortion." There was no tremble, no fear, no apology tucked into her tone, just a simple, unwavering instruction. The room went even quieter. Carter's smirk wavered. He glanced at Ivy. Ivy shrugged, confused. This wasn't how victims behaved. Victims whispered, victims begged. Victims didn't demand fairness on a stage designed to humiliate them. Carter lifted the mic again, regaining his composure. "Why?" he sneered. "Worried it'll make you sound worse?" A few students laughed, but more stayed silent, curious, waiting. The shift was small, but Carter felt it. Attention was no longer entirely on him. A sliver of it, just a sliver, was on Lena, and the crowd wanted to see where this would go. They wanted the show to continue, which meant they wanted her to sing, which meant Carter needed her to cooperate, and that gave Lena her first sliver of leverage. Carter exhaled sharply, rolling his eyes. "Fine, whatever," he muttered. He motioned at Ivy with a lazy hand. "Turn it off. Let's get this over with." Ivy hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then she pressed a button. The red glow on the mic flickered, then died. A murmur rippled through the audience. Phones tilted higher, eyes sharpened. The air tightened. Lena closed her fingers around the clean microphone, not the distorted one. Her hand still shook, but not from panic. From power. She was trying to keep contained. She stepped forward, letting the spotlight fully swallow her. For the first time that night, Carter felt something he wasn't expecting, a chill down his spine. Lena lifted her face toward the ceiling lights. Her shoulders straightened, her breath pulled in deep, long, controlled. No one knew it yet. Not Carter, not Ivy, not the 500 students about to witness history. But in granting Lena her request, they had just unlocked something far more dangerous than they realized. They had awakened a sleeping fire, and Lena was ready to let it burn. For a heartbeat, the auditorium forgot how to breathe. 500 students leaned forward in perfect, eerie unison, waiting, wondering, wanting a disaster. And then Lena opened her mouth. The first note didn't just fill the air. It cut through it, clean, resonant, frighteningly controlled. A single pure tone that carried the kind of clarity only years of training could produce. It rose effortlessly, slicing through the silence like a blade dipped in sunlight. The effect was instant. The crowd froze. Laughter choked mid-breath. A few gasps slipped out before being swallowed by the stillness. It was the kind of sound that didn't ask for attention, it commanded it. Carter's smirk collapsed, drained off his face as if someone had slapped the expression away. He stared at Lena like she had transformed into a completely different person in front of him. Ivy's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her fingers tightened around the distortion mic she'd meant to sabotage Lena with, knuckles turning bone white. Mason, who had been recording the perfect humiliation clip, lowered his phone slowly, unconsciously, like his arm had forgotten what it was supposed to do. Lena didn't see any of them. She didn't need to. Her eyes closed, her shoulders loosened, and her voice expanded, richer, warmer, layered with the effortless vibrato of someone who understood her instrument intimately. Every breath was placed with surgical precision. Every transition glided without friction. She shaped each note like she was molding the air itself. She wasn't performing, she was commanding the room. The kind of command that could make even the most cynical listener straighten in their seat and forget to blink. The audience didn't know the technical terms. They didn't need to. They felt the mastery, even if they couldn't name it. The pitch, the breath control, the resonance, the dynamic shift. It was unmistakable. This wasn't a shy girl forced onto a stage. This was a vocalist, a real one, a dangerous one, someone trained, someone seasoned. Someone who had stood on stages far bigger than this one and owned them. She moved into a more complex phrase, running up a delicate melodic pattern that no amateur could have touched, then dropped into a warm, honey-smooth lower register that sent shivers through the front row. Phones slowly lowered, mouths hung open. A few students blinked, unsure whether they were dreaming, and when Lena held a long, perfectly sustained note, a note so steady it felt like time itself was hanging by it, the tension in the room snapped. No one laughed, no one whispered, no one dared to even cough. The auditorium was silent except for her. Carter stood frozen, his eyes wild with disbelief. This wasn't supposed to happen. She wasn't supposed to fight back. She definitely wasn't supposed to sound like this. Ivy glanced at him, panic flickering across her face. Did you know she could sing? Her expression seemed to plead, but Carter didn't know. None of them did. That was the twist. Lena wasn't just good. She wasn't even just great. She sang like a professional, a veteran, a master, a woman sculpted by years of discipline, training, and stages that dwarfed Dalton High's auditorium. But to Lena, this wasn't her full strength. Not even close. She was giving them the smallest fraction of what she could do. She was holding back. On purpose, because she knew this moment wasn't the end. It wasn't enough to shut Carter up forever. It wasn't enough to erase the humiliation he'd tried to carve into her. Her voice alone could strike them silent. But silence wasn't justice. Silence wasn't punishment. Silence wasn't truth. She held the last note until it melted into the walls like a burn mark, leaving a trembling hush behind it. And as she slowly opened her eyes, as the spotlight framed her like the center of the universe, Lena Russell realized something powerful. She had just revealed 30% of her true ability, and that was enough to shake the entire room. But she wasn't done, not even slightly, because taking back her dignity was one thing. Destroying their cruelty, that would require much more, and Lena was finally ready to do it. For a moment, the world existed only as a trembling line of sound. Lena's voice resonating through the speakers, smooth like silk, yet sharp enough to pierce the thick air hanging in the auditorium. The sound system began to vibrate, a low hum spreading across the stage floor. Even the metal riggings overhead shivered slightly. as if reacting to the force building inside her. The spotlight intensified, brightening until it felt like the entire universe had narrowed into a single point, her. Lena inhaled. It was small, quiet, barely noticeable, and then she unleashed it. A high note, pure, crystalline, impossibly sustained, burst out of her like lightning cracking open the sky. It soared above the heads of the audience, ricocheting across the auditorium walls with a clarity that didn't seem possible for a student her age. The sound hit the back rows before looping forward again, wrapping the entire room in a single, unified frequency that demanded stillness. Students who had been laughing earlier shot to their feet, their jaws dropping. Even those who had their phones out forgot to record, their screens slowly lowering as instinctive awe replaced mockery. No one expected this. No, not in 1,000 years. A few gasps broke through the silence, scattered like sparks. Someone whispered, "Holy crap!" Another murmured, "How is she doing that?" A third just clutched their chest like the note had punched straight through them. Behind the curtain, the school principal froze mid-step, the clipboard in his hand slipping as he stared through the gap in disbelief. Two teachers beside him stared, stunned, as if witnessing something supernatural. On stage, Carter Hale panicked. This was slipping away from him. The stage, the one thing he always controlled, was turning against him. He lunged forward, desperate to reclaim the spotlight. He grabbed his microphone, forced a laugh, and shouted into it, "Okay, that's enough." Except it wasn't, because the moment he spoke, the system shrieked. A piercing metallic feedback blast ripped through the speakers, cutting off his words and slamming into the crowd like an explosion. Dozens of students covered their ears. Some flinched so hard they nearly dropped their phones. Carter jerked the microphone away from his mouth, eyes wide. "What the—" The feedback hit again, louder this time. Students winced. A teacher swore. The principal nearly spilled his coffee. And Lena? She held her note, unbroken, untouched by the chaos Carter caused. Her voice glided effortlessly above the screeching interference like she was built to withstand storms. Carter banged the mic with the heel of his hand, glaring at it. "Why isn't it? What's wrong with this thing?" Ivy's face drained of color. Mason took a step back because she realized she had caused it. In her rush to turn off the distortion earlier, Ivy hadn't noticed she'd also disabled the system's anti-feedback protection. The very feature designed to prevent moments exactly like this. Her attempt to sabotage Lena had sabotaged Carter instead, had struck with the precision of a trap snapping shut, and the crowd saw it. Several students laughed, not with cruelty, but with disbelief at the poetic justice unfolding before their eyes. Carter looked exposed, small, ridiculous, while Lena, still holding the note, looked untouchable. Her voice finally, gradually, delicately descended from its peak, flowing down like a waterfall, easing into calm. The auditorium followed her down, breath by breath, heartbeat by heartbeat, until the room was suspended in a hush so deep it felt sacred. By the time she released the final vibration of sound, the entire school was staring at her as if she had been born under that spotlight, as if she belonged there, as if she had always belonged there. Carter wasn't the center anymore. She was. She had taken the stage from him, not with force, not with fighting, but with mastery so overwhelming that no one in the room could deny it. Every pair of eyes locked onto Lena Russell. And silently, collectively, the audience realized the girl they tried to humiliate had just become the most powerful person in the room. But Lena's rise to dominance was only the beginning, because what happened next, what was about to be revealed, would shatter the entire school. For several long seconds after Lena's final note faded, the auditorium remained frozen in stunned silence. Not the tense, mocking silence from earlier. This was different. It was reverent, unbelieving, shaking at the edges. Then, from behind the curtain, something stirred. A figure burst out from backstage with the urgency of someone who had just witnessed a miracle or a disaster. It was Ms. Daphne Cole, Dalton High's music teacher, clutching a stack of sheet music that spilled from her trembling hands and scattered across the stage like startled birds. She didn't pick them up. She didn't even look at them. Her eyes were locked on Lena, wide with unmistakable shock. She rushed to center stage and snatched the handheld mic from its stand so quickly that Carter flinched. She didn't spare him a glance. She didn't spare the audience a smile. Her breath trembled as she lifted the mic. "Everyone, stop!" Her voice cracked through the speakers like an electric jolt. The murmurs died instantly. The audience stared, confused. Miss Cole turned toward the crowd, chest rising and falling rapidly, unable to contain her disbelief. Her voice came out louder than she intended. "Lena Russell is not an ordinary student." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Carter blinked rapidly, confusion flickering across his face. Ivy exchanged a panicked look with Mason. Even the principal leaned forward from behind the curtain, brows raised so high they nearly touched his hairline. Ms. Cole took a breath, a deep, steadying one, then delivered the truth that detonated the auditorium like a bomb. "She is a national vocal instructor. She trained the Harmony Fest national champion." The explosion was immediate. The auditorium erupted into shouted reactions. "What? No way! You're kidding. She's a professional? That's impossible. She's our age." Lena stood still in the center of the storm, her breathing finally settling, her eyes focused not on the crowd, but on Ms. Cole. The teacher's gaze softened for a moment. Recognition, admiration, awe. The shock spreading through the room had mass and weight, rolling through the students like a tidal wave. Some clutched their phones as if suddenly afraid to replay what they had recorded. Others covered their mouths, embarrassed they had laughed earlier. But then another shock wave struck. A woman in the 5th row shot to her feet, pressing a hand to her chest. "I know her," she whispered. But the mic nearby caught it. "My daughter trained under her last summer. We paid $3,000 for that program." Another parent stood. "Mine too, Lena Russell, from the National Academy." And another, "She's famous in our community circles. Why is she even a student here?" The students swiveled in their seats, gawking at the parents with renewed disbelief. Lena wasn't just a professional. She wasn't just a seasoned performer. She had taught the children of the very people sitting in the audience, people who once proudly posted about her master classes online, people who knew her name, people who had paid thousands to hear the exact voice Carter tried to mock on stage. The realization hit the room like a slap, and then it hit Carter hard. His face drained of color. His breathing quickened. His lips parted in a silent, horrified, "Oh." For the first time that night, the golden boy of Dalton High understood that he had humiliated not a shy transfer student, but a nationally recognized coach, a trainer of champions, a woman with more credentials at her age than he would ever touch in his lifetime. He looked small, pathetic, outmatched, completely and utterly out of his depth. Lena turned her head slightly and met his eyes, not with anger, but with something far worse. Truth that stripped him bare. Truth that said, "You picked the wrong girl." And Carter felt it. He felt it like a blade sliding under his veneer of confidence. But the consequences of his actions, the price he would pay, that had only begun to unfold, because the school wasn't done reacting. The parents weren't done speaking. The staff weren't done processing. And Lena Russell, the girl he tried to destroy for entertainment, had only just stepped into her real power. The night was far from over, and the next blow would shatter Carter's world. Chaos didn't erupt all at once. It spread, fast, sharp, violent, like fire catching dry grass. The moment Ms. Cole revealed who Lena truly was, the auditorium broke into a storm of voices. Students leapt out of their seats. Parents whispered urgently to each other. Teachers exchanged panicked glances, and the sound system struggled to keep up with the rising noise. But in the middle of that chaos stood three people who looked like their world had just been yanked out from under them: Carter Hale, Ivy Cole, Mason Drew. They stumbled backward, off the stage, past the curtains, down the short ramp behind the podium, anywhere they could escape the blazing stares of 500 furious witnesses. The false confidence they wore minutes ago evaporated, leaving nothing but pale, trembling fear. "Carter, what do we do?" Ivy hissed, clutching his arm so tightly her nails dug into his skin. "Shut up, just shut up," Carter snapped, but his voice cracked in the middle, betraying the panic he was trying desperately to hide. Mason hovered behind them, wide-eyed and rigid. His phone was still recording, but his hand shook violently. "Dude, we're dead. We are actually dead. Do you know who she is? Do you—" "I said shut up!" Carter barked again, louder this time, but it didn't matter. The noise of the audience was swelling, rising from shock to outrage. They could hear it from backstage, the growing rumble, the angry shouts cutting through the noise. And then the first accusation landed like a thrown stone. A student in the front row pointed a finger so sharply it looked like it could stab through bone. "You made a national vocal coach your punching bag?" Another shouted, "Are you insane? You forced her on stage? She trained half the parents in this room, idiot. What were you thinking, Carter?" The hallway behind the curtains was suddenly drowned in the angry chorus of their classmates, voices rising, overlapping, echoing. Carter staggered backward, hitting the wall as if physically struck by the weight of their words. His breath came out shallow and panicked. They're blaming me," he whispered, dazed. "Of course they're blaming you," Ivy snapped, almost hysterical. "You dragged her up there. You humiliated her. You helped," Carter fired back. "You brought the distortion mic. You started the whole sabotage." Ivy's face turned ghost white. "Don't you dare pin this on me." "Oh, I will," Carter hissed. "I absolutely will." But their argument was smothered by another voice from the audience, loud and furious. "You bullied a professional singer and thought no one would find out?" Then another. "He's finished. Completely finished." Carter's legs nearly buckled. He felt it now, the shift. The crowd that once cheered for him had turned into a swarm of wolves, teeth bared, circling the scent of blood. The applause he once fed on had curdled into fury. The admiration had collapsed into disgust. And for the first time in his life, the golden boy of Dalton High realized something terrifying. He no longer had control. Not over the room, not over the narrative, not even over himself. His hands shook uncontrollably. Sweat beaded along his forehead. His throat tightened, as if invisible fingers were choking him. Ivy backed away from him, refusing to make eye contact. Mason stepped even farther, suddenly desperate to distance himself from Carter. And outside, the reactions grew louder. Shouts, accusations, the buzz of a crowd ready to tear him apart. But all of it, all the anger, all the humiliation, was nothing compared to what came next, because through the growing thunder of outrage, Mason's phone buzzed violently in his hand. Notifications? Hundreds? Thousands? He glanced down, his face drained of blood. "Carter," Mason stammered. "The video, it's—" Carter swallowed hard. "What about it?" "It's online," Mason whispered. "It's already online. People are sharing it. Everywhere." Ivy gasped sharply. Carter's pulse stopped. "And, dude," Mason continued, voice cracking, "it's blowing up." The hallway spun. The air thinned. The walls closed in. The worst part wasn't the students inside the auditorium. It wasn't the teachers. It wasn't even the parents. The worst part was the world outside. The world that had just watched him humiliate a national vocal instructor on stage. The world that wasn't going to forget. The world that wasn't going to forgive. And as Carter pressed a shaking hand to his forehead, he understood, with sickening clarity, his downfall was only beginning, and the force that would drag him all the way down, social media. The moment Mason's trembling voice confirmed the video had gone online, the damage spread faster than any of them could comprehend. It didn't travel quietly. It detonated. Within minutes, Dalton High became an echo chamber of buzzing phones, glowing notifications, and gasps ricocheting from hallway to hallway. Even students who hadn't attended the ceremony were now sprinting out of classrooms, shoving phones into friends' faces, shouting, "Have you seen this? Oh my God, Carter is done. No way! That's Lena? That Lena? Dude, she shattered the sound system." The cafeteria monitors flickered as students airplayed the video onto the TV screens. Lockers slammed open and shut as students darted across the hallways to show others. Teachers tried to confiscate phones, but ended up watching the clip themselves. Stunned, speechless, humiliated on Carter's behalf. The footage was brutal. Cut number 1, Carter dragging Lena on stage by the wrist. Cut number 2, his voice dripping with mockery as he threatened her into singing. Cut number 3. The distortion mic Ivy had waved at her. Cut number 4. Lena's first note, clean, effortless, breathtaking. Cut number 5. Carter's mic erupting in horrific feedback while she hit a flawless high note that sent the room silent. Cut for 6. Ms. Cole revealing who Lena really was. Students watched the video again and again, each replay stoking the firestorm. The comments under the clip on DaltonNet, the school's internal social platform, exploded. "Carter is done. You bullied a national coach? No way we let him get away with this. Lena is a legend. Justice for Lena." But the moment that shifted everything came 23 minutes after the video hit the local feed. A notification popped up on thousands of screens simultaneously, reposted by Harmony Fest Community Network, then another, liked by Harmony Fest National Champions Group, and then the one that sent a collective shiver through the entire school. Official statement: "We are aware of the public humiliation of a recognized national vocal instructor, Ms. Lena Russell. We request an immediate internal investigation regarding the misconduct by student Carter Hale." The air in Dalton High changed. Clips were still circulating, but now with a different tone, more serious, more condemning, more dangerous for Carter. The Harmony Fest repost meant something enormous. Lena wasn't just known, she wasn't just respected. She was connected to a national organization with influence, recognition, and the eyes of every major performing arts group in the region. In the teacher's lounge, mugs of coffee were set down mid-sip as educators read the repost with widening eyes. In the front office, parents waiting to pick up their children stared at their screens, whispering. In classrooms, students watched the notifications roll in with growing disbelief. "Dude, Harmony Fest is watching this? She trained their winner? That means she's legit, like crazy legit." Carter picked the wrong target. Meanwhile, Carter's phone vibrated violently in his hand. Notification after notification, each one hammering another nail into his sinking reputation. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. He couldn't escape the nightmare unfolding across every screen in the building. Ivy, shaking, leaned against a locker. "This is getting out of control." "It already is out of control," Mason snapped. Carter squeezed his eyes shut, gripping his phone so tightly it nearly cracked. "It's fine. It'll die down. It'll—" A scream echoed from the other side of the hallway. "Oh my God!" Harmony Fest commented directly on the post. Carter's stomach dropped. Another notification appeared. This one like a sledgehammer. "Harmony Fest official. Bullying has no place in the arts. We expect accountability." Carter's breath caught. Accountability. The word echoed through his skull like a sentence being passed. But this wasn't the worst part, not even close, because as his legs threatened to give out beneath him, as the entire school's eyes burned into his back, As Harmony Fest's influence tightened the noose around his reputation, another figure was already making their way toward Dalton High. A figure with far more power, a figure with far more authority, a figure Carter never expected to face, and when they walked through those doors, Carter Hale would wish he had never been born. The VIP waiting room of Dalton High's auditorium was normally reserved for guest performers, donors, and board members, quiet, polished, and insulated from the chaos of the main hall. But tonight, the room felt charged, as if the walls themselves sensed the storm slipping through the building. The door swung open with a decisive, echoing click. A woman stepped inside, moving with a sharpness that commanded attention before she even spoke. Tall, poised, dressed in a black-tailored coat that seemed carved to her frame. She carried herself not like a parent summoned to a school, but like a force the school had summoned without realizing the consequences. Her name was Vivian Russell, Lena's mother, and the artistic director of the National Vocal Institute. Her heels struck the floor in crisp, lethal taps that made Carter's blood run cold the moment he saw her. Vivian didn't look at him first. She didn't look at Ivy, or Mason, or the principal, or any member of the faculty scrambling to look composed. She looked directly at her daughter, not with softness, not with panic, but with an eerie, controlled stillness, like she was assessing the aftermath of an attack on someone far more dangerous than the attackers understood. "Are you hurt?" she asked. Lena shook her head. Vivian nodded once, then turned to the adults in the room, and the temperature dropped. Her voice cut through the air like ice. "Explain to me," she said, "why a national vocal instructor was treated like trash in your school." The principal stumbled over his words. "Mrs. Russell, we didn't know she—" "That," Vivian snapped, "is not an excuse. It is an indictment." Carter felt his throat close. Ivy's breath hitched. Mason tried to inch behind a chair. Vivian's gaze sharpened on the principal again. "You allowed my daughter to be dragged, humiliated, threatened, and mocked in a public ceremony, on a stage you built with my institute's funding." The room went silent. Every eye swung to Carter in realization. Vivian Russell wasn't just influential. She wasn't just respected. She wasn't just powerful. She was a bigger financial contributor to the arts program than Carter's father. Significantly bigger. The truth landed like a nuclear strike. Carter's knees weakened, his vision blurred. He clung to the edge of a table to keep himself standing. Vivian finally turned her eyes to him, slowly, deliberately. Carter froze. Her stare felt like judgment and sentence all at once. "You," she said coldly. "You laid hands on my daughter?" Carter's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Sweat pooled at the base of his neck. Vivian didn't wait for an answer. She didn't need one, because the world had already watched the video. "Unacceptable," she said. "Unprofessional, unethical, and unforgivable." Her words fell with surgical precision. Then she addressed the administrators. "I am calling for an immediate emergency meeting. Right now, in this room." The principal's jaw dropped. "Now? But yes," Vivian said. "If your school fails to respond appropriately, the National Vocal Institute will withdraw support permanently." The threat wasn't spoken loudly. It didn't need to be. The room snapped into motion. Faculty scrambling, staff bringing chairs, administrators whispering anxiously to each other. Carter remained rooted in place, trembling. He had thought the video was the worst part. He had thought the public outrage was the worst part. He had thought Harmony Fest stepping in was the worst blow he could receive. But nothing compared to standing under the gaze of a mother whose daughter he had tried to destroy. Nothing compared to realizing that every ounce of power his father had was nothing beside hers, and nothing compared to the meeting she had just demanded, because the decisions made in that room would change the future of Dalton High forever. The boardroom of Dalton High was never meant for moments like this. Usually it hosted grant discussions, curriculum reviews, or politely uncomfortable parent conferences. Tonight, it felt like a courtroom. The long mahogany table, stretched through the center of the room, polished to a mirror, shined beneath the fluorescent lights. At one end sat the Board of Governors, stiff-backed and silent. At the opposite end sat Vivian Russell, commanding the room without ever raising her voice. Lena sat beside her, calm but alert, hands folded tightly in her lap, and on the far side, shrinking into their chairs, were Carter Hale and his parents, James and Rebecca Hale, the family who believed Dalton High was theirs to influence. Tonight, their confidence had been stripped raw. Carter's father kept one hand clamped onto his son's shoulder, as if grounding him would undo what the world had already watched with disgust. The meeting began with the replay. The video projected on the boardroom screen was the same one the entire school had seen, but somehow worse. The close-up angles, the brutal clarity, the silence in the room as Lena was dragged into the spotlight. Carter flinched, as though reliving each frame. When the high note hit, clear and flawless, the room held its breath, and when Ms. Cole appeared in the video to reveal Lena's identity, a few board members shifted uncomfortably, realizing the scale of the disaster. When the screen went dark again, no one spoke. Not until James Hale cleared his throat. "This," he gestured vaguely at the empty screen, "this is being blown out of proportion. They're kids. This was just a school-aged prank. A joke." Vivian cut in, her tone swift and sharp enough to silence him. "A joke does not involve physical force." She turned to the board. "A joke does not involve public humiliation." And then she turned to Carter, her eyes cold. "And a joke does not require a national organization to intervene." James flushed with anger. "With all due respect, my son never meant any harm. These things happen between students. Lena could have—" Lena finally spoke. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "Sir," she said, meeting his eyes, "a joke never needs a victim crying alone afterward." The room froze. Even Vivian looked at her daughter, quietly proud. Carter's mother's lips trembled. For a moment she looked genuinely remorseful, but the boardroom floor already felt like it was cracking beneath them. One of the board members adjusted her glasses. "The evidence is clear. Carter initiated the humiliation, instigated crowd behavior, and escalated the situation despite visible distress." Another added, "And he did this to a recognized member of a national arts institution. This reflects poorly on the school." Carter's father snapped, "She's exaggerating her importance." Vivian's eyes turned glacial. "The National Vocal Institute is considering a full review of Dalton High's arts charter," she said, "and Lena is not exaggerating anything." The board shifted in alarm. Carter's mother swallowed hard. Carter felt the walls closing in. "We'll move to vote," the chairwoman finally said. Silence fell again, thick, heavy, suffocating. One by one, hands went up. "Disciplinary action, yes. Yes, 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 all unanimous." Carter's father slammed his palm onto the table. "You're ruining his future over one misunderstanding," Vivian replied calmly. "He ruined it himself." Carter slumped back in his chair, face pale, eyes glassy. His breath hitched as the chairwoman read the decision aloud. "Carter Hale is hereby suspended indefinitely, pending a mandatory disciplinary review." It was over, but for Carter, it felt like the ground had opened beneath him, and he hadn't even hit the bottom yet. The auditorium felt completely different from the chaos earlier. The energy wasn't electric anymore. It was volatile, heavy, thick with the anticipation of a crowd waiting for someone's fate to be sealed. Students packed the seats, standing on tiptoes, whispering urgently to each other. Teachers lined the walls like rigid statues. Parents hovered at the ends of rows, clutching their phones, refreshing updates as if the outcome would determine the future of the school itself. When the doors at the side of the stage finally opened, every head snapped toward them. The Board of Governors entered first, their expressions grave. Then came Principal Harper, carrying a stack of papers that trembled slightly in his hands. Behind him walked the Hales, James furious, Rebecca ghost-pale, and Carter trailing behind them like a broken shadow. He looked nothing like the golden boy who had once commanded Dalton High with arrogance and charm. His shoulders caved inward, his eyes red and downcast. The swagger drained out of him completely. Ivy and Mason followed several steps behind, both shaken, both avoiding the eyes of anyone who tried to look at them. The room fell silent as Principal Harper reached the podium. He cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses, and unfolded the paper with slow, deliberate care. His voice, when it finally came, echoed across the auditorium like a hammer striking iron. "After reviewing all evidence," he began, "the board has reached a decision." The quiet deepened. Even breath became soundless. "Effective immediately," he read. "Carter Hale is suspended indefinitely, pending mandatory disciplinary review and counseling requirements." A shocked gasp rippled through the students. Some whispered, "No way." Others murmured, "He deserves it." A few simply nodded, unsurprised yet stunned at the magnitude of the fall. Harper continued, "Ivy Cole and Mason Drew will receive formal disciplinary action, including probationary status, community service, and mandatory anti-bullying workshops." The room erupted, not in cheers, but in raw, visceral reaction. A mix of gasps, murmurs, and disbelief swept across the hall. The tension fractured into scattered pieces of emotion. "That's fair. They got caught. I can't believe Carter lost everything. After what he did, he's lucky, that's all." But Lena did not smile. She stood near the aisle, back straight, hands loosely clasped in front of her. Her expression was unreadable, neither triumphant nor relieved. She didn't revel in the shock waves rippling through the school. Her silence stood in stark contrast to the storm unfolding around her. Because punishment wasn't why she came to the stage tonight. She had never asked for revenge. Justice had been served. Consequences had been delivered. The bullies had been humbled. Yet Lena felt no victory in this moment, not when she looked at Carter, utterly destroyed, trembling, barely holding himself together. Not when she saw Ivy biting her lip hard enough to draw blood. Not when she saw Mason wiping tears with the cuff of his sleeve, realizing how far their cruelty had taken them. Lena understood something the others didn't. This wasn't an ending. Not yet, because punishment didn't heal wounds. Suspension didn't erase humiliation. A verdict didn't undo trauma. There was still something important left, something only she could confront. She inhaled softly, feeling the weight of what came next. The school believed the story ended here, but Lena knew it didn't. There was one final piece missing, one final truth, one final confrontation she needed. Not for justice, not for revenge, but for closure. She turned toward the back exit, because the real ending was still waiting for her. The hallway outside the auditorium was unrecognizable now. Minutes earlier, it had been alive with frantic footsteps, urgent whispers, and the buzzing aftershock of the verdict. Now it was nearly silent, washed in the pale glow of flickering ceiling lights, lined with locked classroom doors, and echoing with the low hum of a distant ventilation fan. Lena stepped slowly into the corridor, letting the heavy fire doors swing shut behind her. The muffled roar of the auditorium disappeared instantly, replaced by a stillness that felt almost surreal. She wasn't used to quiet in Dalton High, not this kind. Halfway down the hall, she saw him. Carter Hale stood with his back against the wall, shoulders slumped, arms hanging uselessly at his sides. His face was blotchy, eyes swollen, hair disheveled. The confident, arrogant boy who once strutted through these halls like he owned them was nowhere in sight. He didn't notice Lena at first, but when he did, he inhaled sharply, like he'd been punched. "Lena," his voice cracked. "Please, wait." She stopped a few steps away from him, close enough to hear his breath hitch, far enough to maintain her ground. Carter swallowed hard. Tears clung to his lashes, and for the first time since she'd known him, Lena saw not anger, not arrogance, not mockery, but shame. Real, painful shame. I'm sorry, he choked out. I know that means nothing. I know it's too late. But I swear, I didn't know who you were. I didn't know. Lena's gaze didn't waver. It shouldn't matter who I am. Carter froze. She continued, voice soft, steady, unwavering. You shouldn't treat anyone the way you treated me. He bowed his head. A tear fell, hitting the tile with a soft tap. I know, he whispered. I know I messed up. I ruined everything. I don't even recognize myself anymore. His breath hitched again. I'm sorry, Lena. Truly, he wasn't the Carter who laughed during her humiliation. He wasn't the Carter who strutted across the stage. He was a boy who had finally been forced to see the damage he'd caused. Lena watched him quietly, her own emotions shifting like tides. Relief, sorrow, exhaustion. Anger, too, lingering but no longer blazing. Finally, she spoke. I forgive you, she said. Carter's head jerked up, eyes wide with disbelief. You do? Yes, Lena answered. I forgive you. A breath he didn't know he'd been holding escaped him, shaky and desperate. But then her voice changed, calmer, sharper, truer. But I won't forget. Carter blinked, stunned. Her words weren't cruel. They weren't vengeful. They were simply honest, like a mirror placed directly in front of him. The kind of truth that couldn't be negotiated away. Forgiveness was mercy, but memory was accountability, and Carter understood, fully, painfully, that this was the real sentence he would carry, the legacy of his actions, the reminder of what he became when no one stopped him. The weight of that knowledge hit him harder than any punishment the school could issue. Lena took a small step back. Goodbye, Carter, not said with hatred, not said with softness, just finality. She turned and began to walk down the hallway, leaving him standing in the silence he had earned. Her footsteps were steady, her breathing calm, her posture straight, but her story wasn't finished. Because what she had reclaimed tonight wasn't just dignity. It wasn't just justice. It was something far bigger, something she still needed to share with the school, with herself, with the future she was now ready to face. As she reached the end of the corridor, the faint echoes of the auditorium's revival washed toward her. Lena's journey wasn't over. It was only changing direction. The auditorium had changed, not physically. The velvet curtains were still drawn, the stage lights still warm, the seats still packed. But the atmosphere was entirely different. The tension that once crackled through the room had been replaced by a restless anticipation, a collective heartbeat pounding in unison. The ceremony, halted for what felt like an eternity, resumed with an energy that no longer bent around Carter Hale or the Bullies. Every whisper, every shifting seat, every expectant gaze pointed in one direction and one direction only, toward the girl who had survived humiliation and turned it into power. Ladies and gentlemen, Principal Harper announced from the podium, his voice steadier than before, we would like to invite Ms. Lena Russell to the stage for an official performance. The room erupted, not with the chaotic roar of earlier, but with a rising wave of applause, the kind felt in the chest, the kind born from awe, respect, and a trace of guilt. Lena stepped out from behind the curtain. This time there was no trembling in her legs, no heat rushing to her face, no spotlight feeling like a weapon. She walked with the measured grace of someone who had reclaimed not just the stage, but her place in the narrative. She wore no dramatic outfit, no glittering dress, just herself. And somehow that simplicity radiated more power than any costume could. As she reached center stage, the lights found her again. But now they didn't blind her, they crowned her. She looked out over the auditorium, rows of faces that had once laughed, doubted, whispered, faces that had just witnessed her truth, and now waited, breath held, for what she would do next. She nodded to the sound technician. A single soft chord hummed through the speakers, gentle, warm, like the first morning sun stretching across a cold landscape. Lena closed her eyes. And then she began to sing. This time it wasn't a battle cry. It wasn't a defense. It wasn't a reaction to humiliation. It was a story, her story. Her voice poured into the room with a tenderness that softened even the hardest expressions in the audience. The melody carried the ache of scars, the sting of betrayal, the quiet resilience of someone who had learned to rise not once, but countless times. She soared into higher phrases, fluid, effortless, and the auditorium leaned into each one. She dropped into lower notes, rich, intimate, and a few students felt tears prick their eyes. The chorus came like a breakthrough. Lyrics about standing again after being pushed down. Lyrics about finding strength in the cracks left behind. Lyrics about reclaiming a voice that someone tried to silence. And Lena didn't just sing them. She embodied them. Her voice filled every corner of the hall, lifting the ceiling, shaking something deep inside each listener. Even the board members, stiff and formal minutes earlier, stood transfixed. When she reached the bridge, the room rose with her, literally. One by one, students stood, rows and rows of them. Teachers stood, parents stood. The entire auditorium rose to its feet, pulled upward by the gravity of her voice. By the final note, a breathtaking, unbroken ribbon of sound, the crowd was standing as one, applauding before the sound even finished leaving her throat. Lena opened her eyes. She had never felt anything like this. Not on professional stages, not in competitions, not in any training hall. This was different. This was belonging. This was home. And as she gazed at the sea of faces, finally seeing admiration instead of mockery, her eyes shimmered with something bright, fragile, and long overdue. This was the first time she felt she belonged here, but the night wasn't finished. There was still one final moment waiting for her, a moment that would seal everything, a moment that would define the ending. The auditorium slowly emptied, but the energy inside it refused to die. It lingered, warm, electric, echoing through the rafters and vibrating along the dusty velvet curtains. It was the kind of energy that stayed behind long after applause faded, the kind that changed people. Lena remained on the stage after everyone else had stepped down, not because she felt obligated, but because, for the first time since arriving at Dalton High, the stage felt like hers. The spotlights had dimmed to a soft amber glow. The hum of conversations drifted faintly from the hallways, but here on the stage, it was just Lena letting the moment breathe. Then came the sound of heels, steady, confident, familiar. Vivian Russell approached from the side wing, her expression softened by pride she didn't bother to hide. "You handled today," she said quietly, "with strength most adults don't have." Lena exhaled. It didn't feel like strength. Vivian stepped beside her, looking out over the empty rows of seats. Strength rarely feels like strength in the moment. It feels like surviving. Lena nodded. Before either could speak again, Principal Harper hurried toward the stage, still holding his clipboard like a shield. He paused at the bottom of the steps, cleared his throat nervously, and climbed up to meet them. "Ms. Russell," he began, looking between Lena and Vivian, "there is something the board would like to offer." "Formally," Lena raised an eyebrow. Offer?" Harper straightened his tie, his tone shifting from nervous to ceremonial. "Given your exceptional skill and your contribution to the arts, both tonight and in your professional career, the board wishes to invite you to become the official vocal coach for Dalton High's music club." Lena blinked. Not in shock, but in realization. Her past, her training, her journey, they didn't need to be hidden anymore. Vivian smiled knowingly. "They finally recognize what they almost destroyed." Harper nodded quickly. "We would be honored to have you. Our students would benefit immensely." For the first time that night, Lena felt something unclench inside her. A small smile curved across her lips, a smile rooted in certainty, not survival. She looked out at the empty auditorium, imagining it filled once more. But this time, not as a place of humiliation, as a place of creation, learning, rebuilding. Finally, she said, "I accept." Harper let out a breath of relief. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Then Lena stepped to the edge of the stage, letting her voice carry confidently through the lingering echo. "Sometimes," she said, "the only way to fight humiliation is to turn it into your stage." Vivian closed her eyes briefly, letting the words settle, and then the doors burst open. A group of students ran back inside, breathless, holding up their glowing phones. "Lena, you need to see this!" They crowded around the stage steps, screens facing upward. On every device, the same video played. Lena's first note, Carter's humiliation, her high note, the reveal, the performance, the standing ovation. But now the numbers beside it were staggering. 0.2 M views, 1.9 M views, 2.4 M views, rising by the second. The title plastered across every repost. They mocked the wrong girl. Comments flooded in. Thousands of them. "She's unbelievable." "Queen behavior." "Carter got humbled so fast." "I'd pay to take her master class." Lena stared at the screens, breath catching. Not from fear this time, but from something brighter, something cleaner, something triumphant. Her story, once twisted into an attempt at humiliation, had become proof of something unbreakable. Vivian placed a hand on her daughter's back, pride radiating through her touch. "They thought they could silence you," she said softly. Lena stepped forward, lit once more by the soft amber glow of the stage. But they chose the wrong girl, and for the first time, Dalton High knew exactly who Lena Russell was and who she would always be. The girl they should never have underestimated, the girl they should never have mocked, the girl they chose wrong, and that is how a girl they tried to break ended up breaking the entire school instead. Lena didn't just survive the humiliation, they accidentally handed her the very stage she was born to own. In a single note, she flipped the script, shattered their egos, and reminded everyone watching that power isn't always loud. Sometimes it waits quietly until the perfect moment to rise. Now, I'm curious. If you were standing in that auditorium, what would you have done when Lena hit that high note? Drop your thoughts below. If this story hit you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the next twist will be even crazier.